This is our last ConnexUs Thursday talk of the year. So we're really excited to have everyone here. I think we've had over a dozen throughout the year covering conflict sensitivity to climate security to digital community stewards already once. And now we're back on a similar topic. So for those of you who have been to every single Thursday talk, welcome. For those of you who have sort of touched on this project, we're really excited to have you as well. We have a host of speakers today talking about empowering digital moderators to foster social cohesion. I want to throw it to the speakers as soon as possible, so I'll let them introduce themselves. I'll throw it right to you, Lena. Welcome and welcome to each of our speakers.
Thank you, Zadner, and hello, ConnexUs community. Good to be back and excited to hear your feedback and questions after we present. My name is Lena Slackholder. I'm the Executive Director of Digital Peace Building at Search for Common Ground. You know, Search for Common Ground is a global peace building organization. I'm also the co-chair of the Council on Tech and Social Cohesion. So why are we as a peace building organization interested in this online space, right? And it's because we know that building peace comes through the building of trust and the enabling of collaboration, which then further builds trust. It also requires that people believe that they matter and that they can make a difference. And yet when we look around us and we ask how are people's digital lives, how are those digital experiences making them feel, we're not sure whether or not their experiences are actually enabling them to trust and collaborate or driving them apart. So what we did is back in 2020, we started to ask this question, and we reached out to people in Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Myanmar, Kyrgyzstan, Kenya, and Tanzania. We asked people who had been involved in violence, who had been supportive of people who had been involved in violence, as well as people who had been resisting violence. What were their experiences online? And as we began to listen, we heard that people said some of the worst, most harmful, most abusive content that they were experiencing actually in online groups. And then we also asked them, well, what do you do about it? And interestingly, some of the people said, well, I take it offline and I go and find that person and I actually fight them. Others said, I just back on. I try to block them. And if not, I just try to really turn away from that space. We also heard that people didn't trust the mechanisms to flag this negative content. So in fact, people were feeling powerless to be able to change these negative experiences that they were having in groups. And yet, as we know, there's 1.8 billion people online. 40% of those actually use just Facebook groups alone. And many, many people are moderating these groups on WhatsApp, on Facebook, on many different platforms. Now, as we were learning this, we also were piloting an initiative in Sri Lanka. Many of you might recall when Facebook got really exposed for the connection between some of their harmful, provocative content in Sri Lanka and the resulting offline real-world violence. That was published in 2018. And it triggered our team at Search for Common Ground in Sri Lanka to say, hey, can we do something about this? And they began to raise awareness and build the skills of people who were running pages or holding groups. And then in 2019, when the horrific Easter Sunday bombings happened, things got really aggravated and heightened tensions across Sri Lanka. And the people that we had equipped with these skills of how to navigate and discern what was true and what was false were able to pull in and play a really key role. We called them cyber guardians, and they were able to debunk very explosive fake news piece that had claimed that government soldiers had been assassinated and massacred in a majority Muslim village. Within 4 hours, we were able to debunk that rumor and send it out through these groups, not working with influencers, but just with groups. And those groups, the way that they debunked that rumor, that reached 77% of Facebook users across Sri Lanka. So we asked ourselves, there's something really powerful in people who hold space online. And that was when we began to develop this program. Now I'm going to turn it over to Darini Priscilla, who's been the mind behind this in our Sri Lanka team, has been leading this for several years. And I'm so pleased to have you speak and tell us what's next, Darini. Go ahead.
Thanks, Lina. Hi, everyone. My name is Dharani Prasanna. I'm the technical lead of this Digital Community Stewards project. I'd like to start with what we mean by a digital community steward because it's a bit of a buzzword. First things first, I want to tell you what or who they are not. A digital community steward is not an influencer. They are not an activist or a peace builder. They're just a regular person from any part of the world who happens to be a digital leader of a social media group. So it could be a group on Facebook, it could be a Discord server, it could be a WhatsApp group chat. But they happen to be a leader of that community, of that online community. And when I say online community, we are not necessarily talking about a family group chat or office group, right? These are groups that focus on various social issues or identities. I want to clarify another thing, which is what we mean by online communities. Because when we started working on digital community stewards, we realized that there were so many different people who identified as online leaders. And, this includes influencers and activists and peace builders. But we wanted to target on this very specific group of people who are very unique because they have no sort of background in peace building or activism. They simply have a topic that they're passionate about or a cause that they're passionate about and have happened to create an online community for people such as themselves. So you can see some of the examples here. Online communities such as this exist in so many different platforms. The popular ones are, of course, Facebook, WhatsApp, Discord, but there are also platforms on Reddit, even a platform on Slack. And most of these platforms that you see here and you might see online, remember, are visible platforms and public platforms. So therefore, there are also online communities that are invisible or private because of the sensitive nature of these groups. And these groups are created for so many different reasons. Based on our research, we narrowed it down to three. One is that it's an identity-based group. So there could be a group that is for, let's say, LGBTQ community, for feminists, for refugees, for divorcees. Then the second is a group on online communities on causes. So it could be about ending gender discrimination, about eco-friendly practices, about animal rights, anything like that. And then we also noticed, especially after COVID, especially after Black Lives Matter in the US, we noticed a lot of online communities popping up, right? Even in Sri Lanka, during the political crisis last year, we saw online communities, group chats popping up then and there so that people can, get together because mobilizing people is so much easier online than it is offline, especially for certain identities who do not have the luxury of meeting up offline. So we noticed that these online communities that are focused on these causes or issues or these identities have these leaders who dedicate themselves to running this group, but they have no training, they have no support, they barely have the time to do what they do, which is to be an admin or a moderator of this group. What we've kind of captured throughout our research since last year is that most of the time, digital community stewards are accidental leaders, meaning that they become a leader without realizing what they're taking on. And what they do, taking care of these online communities, is often a labor of love, meaning they don't get paid for it. They don't get the exposure for it. They don't get visibility or any kind of reward other than the personal satisfaction of, running and supporting this online community. And it is a very complex and time consuming job. And they have very little resources. Even the resources when we were building our curriculum, even the resources that exist online, even through platforms like Meta, are very limited and tends to have a very corporate focus on like, how do you kind of build your content? How do you promote your page? How do you get more members to join? How do you make, engaging content? But there's nothing on real issues that these admins and moderators face, which includes how do I make my online community more diverse? How do I make it more safe? How do I make it more trustworthy? So, what we realized was for this particular group, there was a very kind of visible lack of support, even within the peace building sector, even within the digital peace building sector. So, the DCS project is an attempt to gap that resource, and we developed two sets of resources that we would like to share with you today. The first one we've already shared through a ConnexUs talk previously. It is a collection of training curriculum. It's a training curriculum. Oh, oops, I missed this one. So we have three resources. The first one is the research that we did on digital community stewards. Like I said, there's very little understanding about who they are. So while we were developing these curriculums, we parallelly looked into who these people are, what are the key issues that they faced, and some of the findings were very informative, as you can see on the slide also. It really helped us narrow down what we wanted to produce, what we wanted to kind of support these people with, because it's a very, very new target group that a lot of people are not working on. This particular study is available on ConnexUs. We'll share the link with you on the chat. You can have a look at it as well. But based on these findings, based on this very preliminary research that we did with a diverse group of people, we created 9 specific training modules. And each training modules is hooked on a dilemma or an issue that these community stewards were facing. And we noticed through our research that not all of them were interested in all of these modules, because depending on the nature of the group, their identity, even whether the group was public or private, whether the group was on Facebook or WhatsApp, what they wanted to learn really, differed from one steward to another. So we developed 9 individual modules, which goes as a curriculum. And it's developed in a way that you can mix and match different curriculums when you're doing a training. These curriculums are available for both offline and online trainings of digital community stewards. And again, they are available for public access on ConnexUs. We'll share the link to that as well. But after developing these training curriculums, what we learned was, okay, so this isn't enough, because the training curriculum requires a trainer to do it. But one of the things that we learned is a lot of digital community stewards come from sensitive backgrounds or manage sensitive groups, and they don't have a lot of time to sit through a training, right? Even just a 2 or 3 hour training. And most of them only want training or skills or capacity building when they are in that situation or looking for, some kind of support. So, which is why we developed this online course, the self-learning course, with the support of Digital Learning Collective, so that these community stewards can access these courses whenever they want it and whatever that issue might be. So I'll let Shraddha and Anamika take us through how we develop these 9 online courses and what this is all about. So over to you, Anamika.
Thank you so much, Tarini. Good morning and good evening, colleagues. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce and share with you the digital online courses that we created. These are a series of 9 microlearning courses on digital community stewards. They are created on the EDAP platform. These courses are self-paced. The average duration of the courses is anywhere between 60 to 90 minutes. They are free and they are certified. Certificate courses you can download the certificate at the end of the course. Some of the key topics that these courses cover, as you can see, are very pertinent to anybody who's working in online space in a collaborative way, such as fostering trust and connection, addressing misinformation and information disorder, and how to navigate that, how to build inclusive communities, how to build a culture that upholds digital rights, and how do we build up our digital leadership skills. A lot of very, very cool features have been incorporated within these courses, such as game-based learning and gamified learning, scenario-based and case study-based learnings. I would like to take you through some of them at least. So, for instance, in the course on fact-checking false information, we've used a game. There are several games that we have used across. Okay. So, we've used this game called Bad News. So in this game, you are playing the role of somebody who has no qualms about spreading misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. In fact, you're encouraged to do that without any ethics. And however, your task is to gain as many followers and also monitor the credibility meter. And as you play the game, although it's a long game, but
anybody can, if the player is encouraged to play for 5 or so minutes, and within the span of these 5 or so minutes, they would, so as you can pick and choose based on your decision, the game proceeds. So if you're a frustrated user and you want to just tweet, Twitter tweet, which is, expressing your frustration about the government, you can do that. And the kind of implication it has on your followers and your credibility meter. So as you play the game, through the gameplay, the learner is able to uncover some of the strategies and tactics that people use to spread misinformation, such as impersonation and conspiracy, polarization. And after the game, then each of these topic is introduced in greater detail. Then in another course, we have used scenario-based learning. So I will take you to the course on trust and connection. Okay. So in the lesson on trust and connection, we have introduced the 4 pillars of digital trust. And one of the pillars is the pillar of transparency. So after we have explained the concept of, what exactly is the pillar of transparency and what are the strategies to strengthen this pillar, and through certain activities of fill in the blanks, then we get into something called a scenario-based learning, where we created a hypothetical situation, such as in this one, we created a scenario where if you're a community leader and one of the members is also your friend, wants to share a flyer on the group about the catering business out of turn, or it's not a day on which you can promote your personal business, then what do you do? What is your choice? Would you allow, or would you remind them of the group rules? And then based on whatever choices they take, there is a feedback that lets them know what would be the impact of, breaking this pillar on the culture, the trust and connection within the group. So we have deployed this feedback mechanism throughout the course, after every exercise, after every case study and scenario, so that the learner knows where they stand. And of course, we've also recognized that there could be people who don't want to fit into these binary answer models. So there is also space for them to put in their own personal inputs. Then we have made copious use of something called MCQs. And within the MCQs, in certain lessons, we've used real life social media posts to help members detect whether they are violating the particular content that you're talking about. For instance, in the course on digital rights in online learning communities, we are introducing categories of community standards. And after we've introduced the categories of community standards, we have given them choices of my MCQs. So after we introduce these deceptive information and these categories, along with what their violations look like, then we test them, such as in this MCQ, we've given them this real life social media post, and then we ask them that which of the community standard does it violate. So for instance, if I click on this, then, that's correct. If this particular post stands for both deceptive information and hateful content, because of course, in many scenarios, there are more than one standard that is violated. So, and I would now request my colleague Shraddha to take us through some of the other cool features of the course. Thank you. Over to you, Shraddha.
So this lesson that I'm going to talk about, it basically is on decoding online hate speech. So as you can see on the screen, there's a little cartoon that went around social media saying, "Make the First Lady Great Again." So it basically asked learners to sort of share whether they think this is hate speech or not. Let's say a learner is unsure and they click on maybe I'm not sure. They immediately get a feedback saying, in fact, this is racially insensitive, and then goes on to then help learners really decipher the layers of insensitivity within the cartoon. So they click on this and sort of understand how this cartoon perpetuates negative stereotypes, how there's a historical context that this is completely insensitive to, how Michelle Obama is actually presented as a muscular person, somebody to be feared of, what's wrong with the title saying "Make the First Lady Great Again," etc. So, really sort of using a real life example to help learners understand what the dimensions of hate speech are. It then goes on to explain the 3 attributes of hate speech highlighted by UN. They can read about this, and then uses polls actually to get learners to interact with each other, as well as to take time to reflect on their own beliefs, experiences, and observations. So, what the poll is prompting learners to think about the identities, communities that they've seen often victimized in the online space. So, they can enter the name of the community here and then find out what others think. And then the system actually gives them a sort of word cloud. We don't have too many learners right now, so you don't see a lot of names of communities. But really, the idea here is for learners to understand how other communities towards are also thinking about it. Another quick example that I'd like to take is really the use of comics. So this is one of the lessons on our cognitive biases and how that influences the way we perceive information, especially online content. So it's basically using a lot of comics to explain what confirmation bias is, what implicit bias is, sunk cause effect. And once learners have really, they've gone through the comics, it gets them to also sort of check their understanding of these biases. So you can play this sort of game activity and the system gives you feedback based on your response. And this sort of practice is available in multiple formats. There's this is a drag and drop sort of thing. So you sort of try to complete the sentence based on the options provided and the system again gives you feedback saying, okay, not quite, why don't you, go back and go through the content once again. So that's another example of really, a picture is word better than 1,000 words. So we've used a lot of graphics, comics, etc. throughout these courses. The idea is also for these comics actually to be used by people, organizations, trainers who are conducting workshops, trainings, etc. on these thematics. So they can easily be downloaded, accessed, and integrated within the programs that you may be running in your organizations and with your members. Another quick example, and this one is on role and responsibilities of digital community stewards. And we've used a metaphor of a flourishing garden. So you can just scratch this and sort of understand, it's essentially to make the content sticky. So it's talking about how digital community stewards have the responsibility of developing content, which represents flowers. The fence is the responsibility of ensuring safety of members, ensuring, establishing connections between them and growing the community, increasing membership. Goes on to then giving more details. So you can click on each of the images here and really understand the specific roles within these responsibilities. The system also allows you to download infographics. So there's a bunch of infographics that we've developed for quick recall, as well as to ensure that they can be disseminated easily, shared on socials, etc. So they can be downloaded and used by people like you in your trainings, as they can be shared as handouts. They can also be given as additional reading or learning material, etc. The lesson then goes on to at one place. Really, we've integrated some videos where digital community stewards are really talking about their real life experiences of running these communities. And these are stewards that have been part of this program. So it really brings in really real life experiences of steward to facilitate then discussion forums that help other learners talk to each other. So these videos also can be used in your existing programs if they might add value. I just close this presentation by talking about some of the accessibility features that of these courses. So we understand that accessing online learning, access to laptops, internet, etc., language barriers and cost, hinder access to online courses like these, and therefore the courses have been designed in a platform and in a way that allows easy mobile access. So it's a very mobile friendly sort of platform that we've built these courses on. The lessons of these courses can also be downloaded for offline access. So download them when you have internet and then take the course even without internet. That's the idea. The key infographics that sort of consolidate the concepts, key strategies, etc., are all easily downloadable, available in JPEG format. The courses are offered free of cost, and the affordance of this platform allows us to actually offer these courses in 100 plus languages. So we're very excited about, reaching out to a large group of people with these courses. just we've done testing of some of these courses with digital community stewards, and just want to share some of the verbatims, that the things that we've heard about these courses. People really have mentioned that the courses were not superfluous and there was no unnecessary information. So we've really tried to keep them short and sweet. The design and graphics of the courses have been quite, appreciated by people. The activities were very interactive. They enjoyed challenging themselves to identify misinformation through games and activities, etc. Interactive, fun, informative, and the fact that the content of the courses, they found to be extremely useful in the digital peace building context. Most of the learners, in fact, rated the courses 4 or 5, 5 being the highest. So we are very excited with a very overwhelmingly positive feedback on these. That's all I had about the courses. Over to you, Xander. Back to you now.
Thank you all. I'll go ahead and take the first question. Well, questions were all in the chat. And I think, Darini, you talked about there's so many different online communities, and this course is so helpful to so many, like not just people that run maybe big Facebook groups or, huge WhatsApp chats. Well, you all were going through the course, I was thinking, oh, this person would find this really interesting. And then you'd show something else and be like, oh, this other person would find this part interesting. So I'm curious, sort of with so many different groups and topics and languages and things like that, what are the ways that digital community stewards can get in touch with each other, sort of share resources, lessons learned, things like that? Like, where should they go if they're interested?
Or there are a couple of options for that, but I do want to start by saying one of the biggest things that we wanted to do through this is to connect digital community stewards. Because even when we were doing our preliminary research and running the pilot training, one of the things we noticed was that they were more likely to learn from each other than from us, because they have such a unique job, a responsibility that we can't really fathom. And even during our trainings, they would give very specific advice, very realistic advice that was useful. So yeah, it's crucial to connect them to each other. While these courses are really helpful, we also want to encourage them to learn from each other. So we've tried a couple of things. One is that, as Shraddha and Anamika were saying, we have multiple discussion forums embedded into the course where they can talk to each other. There are questions. For example, we have very specific questions like, we give them scenarios. We ask them about their engagement strategies. What are your coping mechanisms? What are your self-care mechanisms? Different things for different courses. We have multiple discussion forums throughout the 9 courses. So, and they can reply to each other while maintaining their anonymity. But if they want to share their contacts, the names of their online community, they're also allowed to do that. So we've kind of given them the option of doing that. And we really hope they'll do that, because it's a very cool feature in terms of using that discussion forum. Uh, the other thing is, there are also organizations that focus on bringing digital community stewards together because they understand the value of doing that. So one such organization is called New Public. We can share the link again on the chat. So New Public focuses on empowering these digital community stewards in different ways, but also mostly by connecting them so that they can learn from each other and also address very specific issues or situations that they might face depending on different circumstances. So we've encouraged, at the end of every course, when we wrap up the course, we've encouraged learners to kind of join this online community and say, hey, we're very glad that you finished the course. We're happy that you learned. But if you want to learn more, if you want to be connected with people such as yourself, if you want to learn from others, you can also go to this New Public online space and talk to people such as yourself. So that's another way we've tried. And we're very, as you know, we just launched the course. So we're very looking forward to see how they connect with each other and what kind of learnings might come out of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Christine, do you want to ask your question?
Hello.
Yep.
Hi. Yeah. Nice to use this platform for the first time. Yeah, my question is, as the digital world evolves fast, right? Are these courses also updated regularly to respond to these evolving trends and issues? Because some of these issues right now about hate speech or disinformation or misinformation, whatever, may not be the same same, may not be perceived the same way several months later. Yeah, so that was my question.
I can answer that and also allow Shraddha and Anamika to give their input. We were very mindful of that when we developed these courses. Because last year, when we developed the training curriculum, AI wasn't a big deal. At least it wasn't that big of a deal. So if you look at our training curriculum, not a lot of emphasis on AI. But if you look at our online courses, we talk about AI a lot, misinformation spreading through deep fakes. We talk a lot about that. So we understand the need for updating the course content, and what we would recommend people to do is, if you're a trainer or if you're somebody who's using this, we would recommend you to adapt this content as you go forward. But if you are a learner, we've kept the content very general, right? So it's the most updated version that you can get in terms of the situations, examples, data that we've shared. But one strategy that we utilize is that when we talk about specific platforms, so let's say we're talking about how do you kind of make your Facebook group or online community private? Like, what are the privacy settings? We did not include a lot of information on the slides or the content itself. We always included links to the relevant social media page, like the Meta platform, so that they go there because those platforms are updated, whereas our slides are not updated. So we made sure to do that. With any kind of technique, strategy, technical advice we provided, we did that as a precautionary step because, to be very honest, some things that are in our curriculum are no longer, these platforms are changing so fast. Like the community standards are changing so fast. So whenever we spoke about law, policy, strategies, technical things, we always made a note saying, go and check the updated version. If you want to learn more, this is the place. We gave links. So that was our way of mitigating it. So we tried to keep it updated as possible. But where we couldn't, we kind of made sure to give that kind of advice and direct them to a place where they'll possibly get the updated info. Shraddha, Anamika, anything to add to that?
No, Dharini, I think you covered it all.
Great. Thank you. Let's try Nabil again.
Wonderful. I have two questions. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. It was really informative. The way social media has been constructed, it has become like a silo of like-minded ideas. And as a result of that, like if you are a moderator and you're having to deal with a lot of people coming in from situations where, like, they're always siloed into what agreeability is. So how do we learn from that? Like, is the solution to move away from these platforms, to create a new platform? How do you add nuance to it? So that's my first question. My second question is more around the idea of, Xander talked about so many languages. There are also so many cultural nuances. So how do we allow people to make mistakes? Because if I was to say something like ladies and gentlemen, and somebody says, oh, that's a microaggression, I don't have the context for it. So I would really want to say how in communities can we foster learning where people might need to understand context. And so, yeah, and not be like completely snowballed into you being said that you're a bad person. So that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Shraddha,
Can
I'd for you to answer that first question also, because we have an entire module on diversity and there's quite a bit on that. So, yeah.
In fact, one of the modules specifically talks about echo chambers that get built in the online space. And then specifically, we built a module on diversity and inclusion, really talking about how it's so important to bring in people from different backgrounds within the community to ensure that diverse perspectives are reflected. And so, talking about the benefits of having different members, but also strategies to invite different kinds of people into the community. And how do you give out a message to make inclusivity visible within their platforms? So celebrating different festivals, using, different pronouns. So bunch of different strategies to ensure that members are not just represented, members from different backgrounds are not just represented in the community, but then they're also able to participate fully. So talking about equity, diversity, equity, inclusion, all of those. So we've included very specific strategies, very practical tips for community stewards to ensure that their communities are safe and inviting for all kinds of members. I think that's been our approach to address the question that you raised. I think the second question, Anamika, would you like to take it?
What I understand is it was about how do we localize the content so that it is more addressing the local realities and nuances. So at the moment, the course is in English and it recognizes broadly an English speaking audience. But there is a way where you can contextualize and localize the content and make it more suited to your regional or national realities. There is a way where you can edit not just the content, but also update the graphics and the exercises. So there is space for anybody to adapt it and contextualize it.
Can I add one more comment here,
Yes.
Nabil? I think I wanted to appreciate your comment as well, because we're not necessarily assuming that the people that might be interested in these courses self-identify as peace builders and promoters of DEI. And not everybody creates a group online about mothers or pets or sports because they want inclusion. But one of the reasons why we noticed that this was such a powerful space for a more aware leadership was because you might think that you're just talking about your sports club or mothers of, learning disabled kids or something. But then elections happen, and then COVID happens, and then people disagree. And then you're finding yourself actually watching a fighting match amongst your members. And then you're saying, well, wait a second, what am I trying to do here? Or people start sharing fake news in the group, right? So even if you don't have all of that, like super politically correct intent that Shada was kind of describing there, but you're just like, I want to have fun. We're also saying like, you can also have fun and be equipped, be ready to handle the conflict and the diversity that's going to come in that way. And I think that's why we haven't called this like the Peace Builder's Guide to Online Trust. It's really about people who want to hold space and have fun together and just be ready to help build that trust and cohesion. And I'll say one last thing is that, we envision over time that the toxicity of the online spaces may get extremely worse. And so, in fact, the opportunity of holding a space so that if you're going into your online platform, you're like, you know what, I'm just going to go to my group because I feel heard, I feel accepted, I can trust what people say there. And when I go back to my news feed, I'm a lot less sure, and I think we may be living in these worlds where a lot of what we see online is going to become less and less credible. It doesn't mean that we can't also use these digital tools to create trusting, accepting, and empowering spaces.
Really interesting. Thank you all. Going to Wana.
I think nice presentation. I want to congratulate you all for the nice job you're doing, especially as this generation is very important on social media. I just wanted to go the way of diversity and inclusion, especially focusing on the cultural aspects. Me from Africa, Cameroon, we have about more than 250 ethnic groups. And there's always existing tension between the various ethnic groups because of the colonial legacy of divide and rule. And so the social media space has been an opportunity for people just to come and clear out their grievances and create fake profiles to insult others. And so there's a need, I don't know whether there's a course on intercultural competence or cultural literacy, which is quite important for people to know how, because there's a lot of stereotype and misrepresentations in our organization. We are trying not to use words like white and black anymore because they don't really represent any person. And those appearances are not really good to distinguish people. So I just wanted to know whether you guys have courses, especially on intercultural competence and cultural literacy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vana. If I may start and please, Shraddha and Amika add to it. I would say most of these courses have a component of talking about social cohesion or diversity and inclusivity. But there are specific courses that talk about this issue. One of them is, of course, the course on diversity and inclusivity. especially among bigger groups. As your group or your online community grows bigger and there are more different people, how do you kind of manage that? Because while we say, hey, your group needs to be diverse, we need to admit that problems arise when diverse people come together, right? When differences are in one room. So there are courses that address that. There's also a course on healthy communication, because what we've realized is that no matter what we do, conflict cannot be avoided. It's normal, it's natural. So we don't really recommend or advise digital community stewards to eliminate conflict, but rather, how do you transform conflict, right? How do you work with it? How do you work with your group members? So there are several ways that we do that. One of them is that there is an entire lesson on nonviolent communication where we talk about, yeah, you're frustrated. Yeah, things that, difficult in your group, but how do you communicate that properly so that we don't hurt anyone's feelings? There's also a lesson, Shraddha, developed on multipartiality, which is a very interesting concept where you don't take sides, right? It's not about who's right, who's wrong, or not even taking a neutral stance. It's about admitting everybody has a voice and how do we kind of navigate that. So there are definitely courses like that. So I want to highlight one thing about this DCS online course is that you don't have to do every lesson in every course. So, for example, if you go to course 5 or course 6, which is on, if I'm not wrong, healthy communication, you see the lesson names and you might see a course or a lesson on how do I, promote nonviolent communication. You can just download that one. You can just use the slides on that one. We're actually very curious to see which lessons are more popular among which groups. Because like you said, the conflicts that happen in these communities among these people is very diverse. And I just want to close by also saying what you were talking about, that very specific example is, oh, we don't use white or black. We don't use that language in our organization. And then there are organizations that promote pronouns, right? They say we use pronouns, we have pronouns pins. So we don't really take a stance on saying do this or do that. What we do is have conversations. If somebody says we don't want to use white or black, then ask why, right? Have a conversation. If somebody says no, we should, then ask their opinion as well. Similarly, if somebody wants to use pronouns, ask them why, have a conversation. So we kind of encourage these kind of questioning and also healthy discourse. So these online communities have conflict, but they transform into something that's healthy, right? So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Maybe I can just add to what Dharini did mention, the specific lesson on multi-partiality did come to my mind. I think it's difficult to include all kinds of, communities, races, nationalities, etc. in such short micro-learning courses. Our effort has been really to build the skills to have empathy and to know that you don't know many things. So how do we build skills to be able to take in multiple perspectives and acknowledge that you often don't have historical context, etc. So the other lessons, one definitely was to really talk about the fact that while facilitating a community of diverse people, the facilitator needs to invite multiple points of views. There's also a lesson on empathy, and it's interesting, it falls within the leadership module. So really talking about how we tend to empathize more with people who are like us or who think like us, who believe in similar things as us, and why empathy cannot be exclusive. And really goes on to then help, getting learners to reflect on their own biases and understanding why as leaders they need to be very cognizant of this fact. So that's another, our approach has really been to build those kind of skills and perspectives in the minds of learners. Another very subtle way in which we've sort of tried to ensure that the graphics, at least in the course, are not representative of one community. So you'll see many colors, people, differently abled people. The case studies will have an Asian and, a person from Africa. So and even the videos that we've created basically have digital community stewards from across different countries. So that's been one of our ways to sort of also make these courses more inclusive and relatable to stewards.
I promised one of our question askers the last question, but there's a few of them that I keeping an eye on time. I think I'm going to try and squeeze them all together. So sort of summarizing the remaining questions that we have. One is about sort of we started this project before, like the AI boom, whatever we want to call it. And so how do we get digital community stewards ready for like the sheer volume that's possible of dis and misinformation, especially from bots, especially with AI now? And then the other one that we wanted to close on was on sort of what's next, what's the next project on this, what's needed in this space to help complement the work that we're launching here today. So I'll sort of throw those ideas out there, but mainly as an opportunity to give each of you sort of the last point that you want to make for us to wrap up here today. Does somebody want to go first?
Yeah, I can talk about the bot question that was raised. So we have engaged with the bot and AI based spread of misinformation question in some of the lessons. One of them also talks about how internet bubbles are formed and how online polarization happens. And after introducing the topic, we have given certain strategies on how one can become more aware of when one is being drawn into such a polarizing bubble or internet thought bubble, and what are the ways which you can um, you can safeguard yourself, like not just falling for one kind of perspective, but reading up and accessing there are multiple sources of information and multiple perspectives, or talking to multiple people who are actually deliberately going out and reaching out to people who are different from you, so that you can take in very different and diverse perspectives. So a number of strategies and that just strategies are put in place that would like serve as a bulwark against any kind of online polarization. And as I said, there is a lot of scope to keep improving and updating the courses as the challenges also grow. So yeah, we'll have to keep reforming ourselves with the time.
Maybe I'll add a couple things about what I see next. Number one, I think we really want to get the reach. We want, hundreds, thousands of digital community stewards to try this out, to become part of a community, because I actually think that they can be an important constituency that we should listen more to when we think about how we want technology to be designed and deployed going forward, right? So I actually really hope that, the people on the call today and others can share this widely so that we can begin to have people identify. I'm a community steward. I hold space and I'm interested in having a voice about the direction of technology. I think that one of the key things that will come, which we see right on the horizon, is to what degree trust or fear, polarization or violence is going to be emerging from the relationship of users with generative AI, and the ways in which the same risks of bias, of filter bubbles, of conspiracy theories, of mistrust, of dehumanization, all of those things can also come if we're not attentive to the way that these large language models are deployed, and studying the relationships and what happens to people emotionally and psychologically as they begin to rely more and more on them. So keep posted. I'm sure we're going to be paying much more attention to that in 2024.
Definitely. Keeping an eye on the time, I just want to thank you all so much. We'll get this recording edited and posted as soon as possible, but also start thinking of an excuse to bring the four of you back for another session like this, because as with any launch, this is just sort of scratching the surface. We have so many people in the ConnexUs community interested in this topic, so we'd love to have you all back sometime. Yeah, thank you all. We'll send out the links we shared today and be in touch.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you, everyone.
Very, very enlightening session.